Hello, my fantastic students. Today I have a wonderful video for you. This video is an opportunity for you to practice your listening skills to the British accent, actually to 2 British accents today. This video will be lasting around about 35 minutes, so there's a lot of opportunity here to really practice and see how good your listening skills are. Check to see how much you understood and tell me in the comments after the video. In today's video, I will be having a chat with another teacher Tika. Tika is from England and now she lives in Korea, helping Korean students learn English. In this video, we'll be discussing a little bit about how Tika became a teacher, and we'll also be discussing about how students can improve pronunciation, can improve their fluency, and be able to improve how to speak more clearly. This video was not only great just for your listening skills, but also to give you some tips for your English journey. I'm sure you will enjoy it. Let's get into it. So thank you so much for joining me today. Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody who doesn't know you, who may not know you? I'm sure they already do.
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Tika. My Instagram is Tika Teaches English. I am a native British English speaker, and I teach anything and everything on Instagram. Idioms, phrasal verbs, grammar, you name it, I do it.
Excellent news. And why did you become a teacher?
Well, it kind of found me, I would say. I have had friends that were not native English speakers a lot of my adult life, I would say, not so much as a child. And I've always just helped them. If I say a word and they don't know what it means, I explain it to them. And they just said to me one day, why don't you do this as a job? You're a really good listener. You're very good at explaining things. I think you would be very good at teaching English. So I started it, I tried it, I dipped my toes in the water and I liked it. And I've never stopped. I've been teaching for just over 3 years now.
And obviously you're doing your own lessons at the minute and you've got your own thing going on, but you also do a lot of content on Instagram or other pieces of social media. So what inspires you to do that?
I just find it very fun, I guess. I love, probably the thing I love most is the interaction with people. I enjoy creating content. I think it's important to enjoy creating content because it can burn you out. I post basically every day of the year, including Christmas Day sometimes. You can get burnt out. You have to enjoy it. And I love that interaction of learners, the feedback. Wow, I didn't know this idiom. Thank you for teaching it to me. Things like that. I just love the feedback more than anything.
Yeah, there's lots of chances to meet people from across the world. So we learn things about different cultures, yeah.
For sure. I have people sometimes going back to idioms. Whenever I post an idiom, or most of the time, there will be a comment from someone that will say something like, we say this in Persian too, or we have something similar in Turkish. And I love that. I learn how common some idioms are from one country to the next. Some places have the same idioms in English. They're not always specifically English ones. And I love that.
Yeah, it's great to see that there's like such a connection and that even students didn't know that that was there, but then they can learn something quite easily because there's such an easy crossover between the 2 languages, theirs and English. Teaching on social media is very different to teaching in real life. Mm-hmm. What skills have you gained from teaching on social media, do you think?
Well, you have to be a good people person on social media. I think both of us and any other social media user listening knows not everyone on social media will be nice. So you have to be a good people person and work with good and bad situations. I think not just that though, but my confidence on camera has changed a lot. I think when you first begin, you're quite, I say like robotic. It's like you're reading a script. There's no emotion or feeling. I don't feel like that now. I feel like I'm much more comfortable in front of the camera speaking, speaking to nobody, but pretending I'm speaking to however many people. Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Comfortable with that. It's crazy, but yeah, it's an important thing. I think, the first year even is mine. I remember were terrible. Not terrible, just like took a long time. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you don't have. I'm speaking in general. You don't have your personality in the first videos because you're just speaking, and that's all you're doing. And I think, you see your personality in your videos now. And I think people see mine a bit more too, because I feel more comfortable to act normally now, 100%. To be more myself.
Yeah, it's important. Okay. And do you have any advice for anyone who wants to become a teacher, maybe on social media in the future?
Just teach what you enjoy, really. I think many people feel like they have to get into a niche, for example, like IELTS or just teaching children or just teaching adults. If you want to do that, then that's fine. My Instagram, I just teach everything. There's no specific, idea. You can't look at my Instagram. I teach English, but you can't see my specific niche, I would say. Do what you enjoy and then you'll keep enjoying it. I tried to fit within a niche before. I tried to do pronunciation for a while, but I stopped enjoying it. So then I reverted back to, I'm going to post what I want to post. And I'm going to post something I said today, an idiom I said today. And I enjoyed that more. The feedback from that is much better, I think. I started watching Peaky Blinders last night. I've never seen it. And I was quite surprised because so many students say that they watch Peaky Blinders for English study. How? They have a really strong Brummy accent. I'm like, how do people understand this? That, even sometimes they were speaking and I was a bit like, okay, that's strong. I got most of those words. I don't know how people use it for English learning.
Yeah, it's interesting. I watched some of it, maybe a couple of episodes. Sure. It looks like it's quite good. I just didn't have time for the rest of it, but it's definitely the accents are strong on it for sure.
Yeah, I like it though. It kind of, it's not like your British accent. It's the, showing that there are more than, just Downton Abbey or The Crown. It's showing that.
I like that. And especially as that's like old.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So it's very outdated, some of the terminology. Some of the students really stress about the language use. And
yeah. I kind of like that it's showing a different part of England as well. You've not just got your rich people. You've got your gangsters and all the industrial side of, post World War I England. So it's like, this is more what England was like than Downton Abbey. That's more what you would see than the manners everywhere.
Many students who come to me often ask about pronunciation, and they want to have a native accent or native style pronunciation. In terms of communication, how important is pronunciation?
As far as pronunciation goes, I would say students need to focus on pronouncing words clearly. They don't need to focus so much on accent. Accent is only a point of focus if their first accent from their native language is so strong that a native or other non-natives would find it hard to understand them. You don't need a British accent, American, Australian, etc. You don't need those accents to speak English well. You just need to speak clearly. I always just focus on having a clearly understood accent with my students and not making them a British sounding speaker. I don't think that's very important or necessary.
Okay, that's great. So when you say like a British speaker, what do you think comes to mind for most people?
I think when people think of the word Oh, when people think of British English, they think of the BBC, maybe the Queen. They think of shows like Downton Abbey, The Crown. They think of that received pronunciation type of English. I think some learners think that's how all British speakers speak. And actually, I would say that it's not so common to hear received pronunciation in a lot of England. So you're going to really hear a lot of different accents and not just BBC English.
Yeah, 100%. So how can a student deal with that? That's a lot of pressure, isn't it? I mean, there's so many different types that are around and that they may come across. Do you think that they should focus on all of them?
I wouldn't say so, personally. To give an example of myself, I'm a native English speaker, but certain accents around the UK or even just around England are not so easy for me to understand. We're talking about accents like in Liverpool, you have the Scouse accent. Scousers have a very different accent to myself, and that can be hard for me to understand. Places like Cornwall or somewhere, they speak different again. Around the UK, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, they are hard even for me. I don't focus specifically on those accents. If I did, they might be easier, but you cannot focus deeply on learning and understanding every accent. You just have to accept you might not understand everything someone says, just like I might not understand everything that somebody will say to me too.
With that being said, though, do you think that a learner needs to learn all pronunciation types?
I don't think so. I think it's helpful to expose your ears to different types of pronunciation. Don't just focus, for example, on only listening to received pronunciation. Don't just listen to the BBC. I always suggest to my learners with listening practice, just watch some vlogs, video blogs on YouTube. Watch some random English people going to the supermarket, all of the weird things they do, traveling, and you will hear real English, the words they say, but also the accent. There will be background noise. It won't be very easy, but it reflects real life so much more than a TV show with just one accent. So yes and no. It's helpful to expose yourself to them, but don't be too stressed about it.
Definitely so. So I think that many students ask me about this, and I always find that students are trying to prepare for that one conversation that they might have with someone who has a Scottish accent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it was me, I want to know what I'm using English for and then decide from that. You don't need to understand everything, Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't understand necessarily how to be a goalkeeper. Sure. So there's a reason for that. He doesn't need it in his day-to-day job, within his game. He doesn't need it. So I always say, you're kind of making yourself not very efficient. It's going to take you a long time. It's useful. Of course, everything's useful, but I think at the end of the day, we have to, if we're aiming to try and improve quickly, you want to use, I don't like the word quickly, but for example, by trying to learn everything, it's probably the worst method you could choose.
I have some students that I maybe would get to target a specific accent more because, like you said, with the conversation with the Scottish person, this student will come to me and say, I'm working with a client. They are in London. I think they have this accent. I find them very hard to understand. So I will say, okay, let's do listening practice with that accent, because at that moment in time, understanding that accent is very necessary for their job. Or I have Irish clients, or I have to communicate with people from India in English. So we focus on those accents then because it's necessary for them. But if you're just learning in general and you have no need to focus on one accent, then I don't suggest it. Only if you need it for your job or, for communicating, because the more you listen to an accent, the more you will understand. But that doesn't mean listen to every accent intensively to understand them all. I don't understand everything that everyone says.
For me, it's really to do with what you need it for. So
yeah.
If you're in Brazil and you're going to be talking to other Brazilians in English, maybe occasionally someone from America, then I'm not saying ignore British English, but I'm saying that you maybe don't need to focus so much time on it, because that might be the thing that's stopping you from getting to your goal, which is to be fluent within your work environment. So it's definitely something I think people should think about for sure.
Yeah, kind of basically prioritizing, like you said, what do you need it for? I like British English, but I'm not going to be speaking to British people. Maybe British English shouldn't be your priority then. You should see what is necessary for your future goals. If you're going to study in America, don't focus on British English because you won't hear it. You can watch some British things, find some British words, but it's counterproductive really to focus on something that you won't use so much really.
Obviously, to improve our speaking skills, we need to do practice in some way, shape or form. And many learners want to speak with native speakers. Do you think it's important?
I don't think it's the most important thing. I think there's this real problem maybe with non-native teachers being picked after native teachers because people think a native speaker is best. I'm just specifically talking about teachers right now. I think non-native teachers are incredible. They learn English as a language themselves, whereas native speakers didn't particularly. They will have so much knowledge. There are, of course, some things that native speakers can do that maybe non-native speakers cannot. We know the culture behind words sometimes, or the stories behind words, the feelings, the nuance of certain words, especially, speaking from a British perspective, some words might sound rude and, like wait. So I'll teach students in England or in many countries, the word wait can be quite rude. Say this instead. But also, non-native speakers can have a huge amount of knowledge and can be just as helpful as native speakers, I would say.
Okay, great. Yeah, obviously there's many people you can speak to as well, not just teachers. You can speak to other people who are in your class or online. There's so many potential opportunities to speak to other learners, As someone who's also learning a language, do you try and speak when you can to others?
Yeah, I give it a go. I think any language learner can sympathize with other language learners where you feel quite nervous and shy to speak to a native or a non-native in this language, because I think especially with the native, they are very good. They are advanced at that language, and you are maybe not so much, and you worry about being wrong or sounding stupid. But I think it's very important to speak in that language. You don't know your mistakes until you make them. And part of making mistakes is speaking and actually using that language. It's in your head, but it's useless if it just stays in there. You have to use it with people. And like Stu said, it can be a native, it can be other non-natives. Just finding someone to practice with is the most important.
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, people would not practicing at all. So you can't improve your speaking skills in that scenario, of course. So in terms of pronunciation, how do you recommend to your students to help them improve that side of their speaking skills?
I think pronunciation takes time. I always try and remind my students that pronunciation doesn't change overnight. it's about these links with your brain and the building certain muscles in your mouth, especially like Stu and I both learn Asian languages, and they're very different in pronunciation to English. Certain sounds in both countries are not the same in the other. And part of it is building these muscles, but also this connection with your brain. Like, I can't say L sound because that doesn't exist in the language I'm learning. So I need to remind myself about those things. Repetition, mostly. Repetition, I recommend students, if they cannot practice with a real person, a teacher, a friend, a other person, native, non-native speaker, record yourself. Keep practicing every day. Record yourself. Listen back to it. You will, over time, learn to recognize the differences. Minimal pairs are very helpful. Two sets of words that people commonly mispronounce, but we should pronounce differently. Practicing things like minimal pairs will help train not just your mouth, but your ears as well to recognize the difference in sounds.
Many students want to improve their listening skills. So what do you recommend to anybody that comes up to you and asks that question?
I often recommend, firstly, for students to listen to things that they enjoy. I think many students focus specifically on English learning related listening, which is very helpful. I do suggest that people listen to that too. But I also suggest, if you like fixing cars, or if you like cars in general, watch something related to cars. If you like fashion or beauty, watch some English videos related to that. You'll learn vocabulary related to your hobbies and interests then. Another thing I suggest is something that's not too long, because for myself personally and for many learners, repetition is important. I always suggest watching a video multiple times, and each time usually you gain more of an understanding of what they are saying. Many students pick movies, they're very long, so it's hard to repeat them, and you stop focusing. A short video, something you're interested in, you can focus and you can repeat, and you can gain more of a listening kind of ability and understanding that way.
Yeah, definitely. Why do you think that people want to watch movies? Because obviously that's something that maybe they do in their free time in their own language, but is it easy to transfer over?
I don't really know specifically why people want to watch movies. That's probably for you, and definitely for me, a very common concern of people. I want to watch movies in English without subtitles, and that's like a huge goal for them. I think that's probably because a lot of the famous movies that are constantly released are in English, and most of the time, I live in Korea, most of the time they are just subbed. They're not dubbed. So people in Korea have to sit and read the subtitles for these movies. And maybe they would prefer, I'm sat in the cinema, I'm just enjoying the movie because I can understand what they're saying. I don't have to do any reading at all. Movies are just so long, I think. And I think my personal thought is that someone is a superhero if they can sit through a 2-hour movie and practice active listening the whole time. You switch to passive eventually. You start reading the subtitles. Nobody can focus on every part of English in a 2-3 hour movie. It's too tiring. It's too hard, I think.
Yeah, there's multiple problems, I think, with movies, in my personal opinion. Not just the mixture of accents, which the further on you get can be very useful for practice, but intermediate or beginner, I think, is a bit of a stretch. Mm-hmm. But not included in that, the plot, you have to think about the plot. If it's a new movie, the length of the film, of course, you touched on already. And the subtitle thing is definitely something that can cause a problem. If you think, I kind of tried to split up the brain in a sense of like, what are you wanting from the film? Have you watched it before, first of all? If you haven't watched it before, what are going to be the key things you need to know? The key things you're going to need to know are the plot, otherwise it's pointless watching. So you have to understand something, and how can you transmit that data in the fastest possible way? If you have the subtitles on and your reading skills are high level, that's going to be your pure focus, and you're probably not, actively trying to exercise your listening skills. It's more passive in that situation because the reading is taken over. So I think that is one of the biggest concerns in terms of listening skills and watching movies is do you know the film? First of all, I always say watch it once in your language, then watch it in English. And then spend, if you've never had taken away the subtitles, take 5 minutes off of it and then go back to the movie. See if you can understand the bits that are going on, because at least you have some concept of what might happen.
Well, even like my husband, people that are listening maybe know, maybe don't. My husband is a native Korean speaker, so English is his second language, and he doesn't want to sit and watch a movie and have to constantly focus on what they are saying. And he can understand English very well, but he wants to enjoy the movie or the film. Well, I'm going American. He wants to enjoy the film without having to constantly be listening. You can just sit back and relax if the subtitles are on. And like you said, Stu, you can learn the plot and you can see what's happening. And it's much harder if you're focusing on the words that people are saying. I agree with like what you said. Watch the movie. It's annoying me that I'm saying movie. I don't know why. Watch the film at least once before, understand the plot a bit, and then watch it again. I have a student, not with listening, but with reading. He read all of the Game of Thrones series. He read all of the books. He's Greek. And now he's starting to read them in English because he kind of knows what's going on because he read them in his native language before. So it's good to have that grasp on what it's about.
The terminology is so specific.
Yeah. Very weird sometimes.
I think it's interesting. You touched on some good points. And I think that with people trying to watch movies, it's very tiring when you do it in a second language. So who wants to do a marathon when you just want to eat cake?
Yeah.
You don't want to have to do all that running whilst you're doing something you enjoy. So I think it's a really tricky one, movies. At least TV shows are quite short, but I don't even recommend them. Sometimes I predominantly suggest YouTube videos because you can change the length of time. So, and you can look at any topic. Movies are so specific, and some of the plots are nothing you've ever experienced before. Sure. Like, I've never robbed a bank. So the terminology in a second language is going to mean nothing to me. So you're already doubting yourself before you even start practicing, So I always find that I get why people want to watch movies. It's an interest. It's something they enjoy and they can relax with. And teachers always say, do the things you enjoy in the second language. But the length of time and the difficulties that come up, they're just too frequent. I think it's very inefficient unless you're an advanced learner.
I guess one thing that you could do, and some of my students do this, and my husband does this, watch the movie with subtitles, understand what's going on, go to YouTube and find movie clips, because that's everything you want in a short period of time. You've got, I don't know, a clip from the Avengers, one specific talking scene. It's maybe 3 or 4 minutes long.
Yeah.
And then you can practice that specific scene in English. It's short, you can repeat it, you can do what you want with it. And it's not the full film. It's not the full film. You can just keep watching this clip over and over again instead of trying to find it in the film. YouTube is always my first one too. YouTube is the top for me with listening practice.
Or podcasts like this one. So guys, always tune into this one, and then you can practice your listening skills. Do you think that if you don't understand something in a movie or a TV program, should you go back to it and learn it, every single small thing?
I don't think so. I think it's just like when you're having a conversation with another speaker in English, you just have to grab some things from context sometimes. Like you touched on earlier with the Game of Thrones series, some of the language in that is very strange. Or if we're going back to conversations earlier, Downton Abbey, The Crown, they are based in the past. Some of the vocabulary they use is not current vocabulary. Even as native speakers, we just have to guess from context sometimes. I don't know archaic vocabulary because it stayed in the past. So even for us, we don't know every word that we will see. Some American vocabulary, I don't know it all, especially slang. I just have to guess from the words around it, from the context, what's going on. Yeah. You have to build those skills of just guessing from context.
Yeah, definitely.
Unless it's a word that you really want to know. And then, yeah, sure, go back and learn it if it was like something that stuck with you, but not every single word. You know, don't read every word in a book.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think you need to learn everything at all. You know, many people do attempt to, but I think it's very inefficient. And you can't improve your reading fluency whilst doing that either. You know, the speed of which you read, it becomes very difficult if you try and find every single, you know, if you try to go through and be like, oh, need to fix this, need to fix this, need to fix this. You know? So it's the same as what we were talking about previously about when a student comes to you and trying to fix everything whilst they're speaking. It's kind of inefficient. You know, you can't improve the ability to do it for long periods of time, and then doing that skill for long periods of time, and then that way you can't find as many mistakes and this kind of thing, you know. So it's interesting for sure.
It's just about having those key parts of a sentence. You know, I've had to do a Korean exam in the past, reading exam. Some of the reading material was above my level. It became quite advanced towards the end, but you just, with speaking, listening, reading, you have to identify, right, what's the subject of this sentence? What's the object? What's the verb? They're the most important things. The other words are not so important. Find the important parts of a sentence. Don't listen to every word. Listen to the most important things. Put them together. I know they're talking about the library yesterday and a book. Blah, blah, blah. So you kind of can get the gist. You can get the general idea of anything written, spoken, you know, that you're listening to. And I, as a listener, can do that with lower level speakers of English. Their grammar might be all over the place. Their sentence might be completely mixed up. As long as I can identify the important parts of their sentence, I know what they're saying. So it's just about identifying the best bits of the sentences.
So, what did you learn today? Tell me in the comments if you got a new tip from this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in more listening practices just like this, check out this video here. It's certain to help you.